Hi, Bright Idea family. Welcome back to our channel. Listen, I want to take a second to ask you to do three things for me. If you are really enjoying this content and you're finding that this is helpful, I want you to like, subscribe, and share.
Create a time for them that's especially unique for their literacy time. When you have your story time, like I said, I almost showed up here with my pajamas and maybe a little cup of tea or whatever. Make it a really special time. Have their favorite blanket. Let them choose the book. Anything that you can do to keep them engaged. And I feel like I'm just talking. Let me keep checking the comments because I want to make sure I'm engaging with you through your language over here. Okay. The next thing I wanted to talk with you about is the definition of literacy and the components. So I told you what literacy is. Literacy is the engagement of all these words. It's how we interact and what those words mean to us in this world. But I also want to talk about how it's not just words, it's how we interact with those words, but it's our comprehension of those words, it's our communication with those words, and all those things put together will develop their academic success. Some techniques that you can use would be things like making sure that you do games. There are learning games. One of the games that I used to play with my students in school that they absolutely used to love, I would take their vocabulary words and I'd put them on cards, give them a board, and I would have them draw. Either we could call it Pictionary, or sometimes I would have them act it out, like charades. So charades and Pictionary are great ways to get them involved in using their language and learning how to express and making the connections between words and things. Another game children like to play, and those games are good for all ages, right? I'm a woman of a certain age, and I still like to play Pictionary and charades. Another thing that they like to play is I Spy. With I Spy, they would, you know, you would teach them how to expand their language by describing different things that are around them and have them figure out what you're talking about. Little kids really like that game. Sometimes I see, middle schoolers play it too. But I Spy is a great way to expand the vocabulary and to help them interact and figure out the world around them. And those are great ways also to encourage their love for reading and there are things at home that you can do. So we've talked about going to the grocery store, playing games, having special times for reading. There's so many ways that you can incorporate language and literacy throughout the course of your day. So when your child comes home and you say, well, what did you do at school today? And they give you the standard answer. You all know what the standard answer is. You could probably type that in the chat. It was okay. Most of the time when you ask the question, if you're lucky to get anything, sometimes you hear just cricket. You can start making them excited about it. It's time for reading. It's time to talk. Let me tell you about my day. Start telling them about your day, and then you'll be surprised at how all of a sudden they have so much to say. All right? Okay. Okay, so this is one of the slides. I think the next one is going to be an activity. So let me make sure I cover. I'm telling you, I'm just talking ahead of myself. The importance of vocabulary, techniques for expanding. I've given you all that, using language and using games and activities. I just went through that. How about I take a break? Because my body is like this. I'm ready to just keep going. Why don't you, in the chat, tell me some games that you actually use to help your child develop their language? What are some of the things that you do with them? I know I talk so much that I don't really give you a chance to engage in the chat. But tonight, I actually do want to hear from you. And I think it's good that the other parents hear from you too, because it's something about hearing from another parent the things that work for them. I don't see anything in there yet. but I know you have them. I know I'm not the only one playing games. Oh, singing songs, absolutely. Singing songs is a great way, especially the songs with learning the numbers and the letters. Yes, the ABC song, the counting songs. There are hand washing songs. There are potty songs. There are all types of songs. Um, Even some songs that I don't know. I used to have these like what do they call them? I can't remember the name of them, but I remember my science teacher used to say my very something has something. I remember the whole thing, but each letter stood for something, and it was a way to help us remember our planets. My very educated mother just made us nine pieces or something like that. But way back then when I couldn't figure out what are the planets, that was something that our teachers used to use to help us. Um, I see Mrs. Jean Baptiste saying it's a good device, repeating words and colors. Sometimes you can use flashcards. Flashcards are another way that you can, another tool you can use to help them remember words. A word wall is also another great tool. Words that are new for them, or words that they are learning, or words that they really like, put it on a wall. Just make a little card of it and put it on a wall, and they can go to their word wall. That's something we used to do also in the classrooms. Okay. All right. Okay. So I thank you all for sharing, brushing her teeth to the Elmo and Usher in her favorite movies. Thank you for sharing so much. Okay, so let's keep going. So we've been talking about stories. I shared with you what I would do as a teacher and as a mom when it was story time, how you can take the book and really not just read the story, but get them involved in all parts of the story. The title, the back, the bind, the author, the illustrator, having them really dive in. Be expressive when you're teaching, when you're reading to them. If you're teaching them a new word in the story, it's okay to pause sometimes and say, what does that mean? Or what does that sound like? Do you know this word, or do you recognize this word? Because if you're building a word wall and they're developing all this language, remember by 3, they have hundreds of words. So it's okay to take a break and let them start seeing those words. Use books where the words rhyme. They have word families. Dr. Seuss was excellent with this sort of thing. The Cat in the Hat was a great book with all the AT word families, and the kids after a while could know the words of the book just because they were reading those words that rhyme together. And it's great to read to them and to talk with them about stories, but you know what's even better? When they create their own, whether they're creating those through writing. If you have a child who's challenged with the writing, have them dictate a story and listen to themselves telling the story. Sometimes they get a huge kick out of hearing their voices and hearing a story. Let them use books on tape. Use books on tape to imagine what the author is describing and how that story is coming together. If you're trying to get a child more involved in reading, and I know it's hard, right? Because technology is so much more entertaining. Books were our technology. We got lost in stories. That was our escape. Now they have so many other things that they can escape with. So as much as you can, get them involved in listening to stories, or listening to you, or telling the stories. And those are ways to incorporate technology in this whole process and get their language skills up. Okay. So I went with you before through the activity with the book. This is the book that I'm actually going to share this story with you tonight. This is one of my favorite books. I used to read it every day to my students. They knew, and these are my preschool students, of course, they knew when they saw this book come out, it's time to get ready to lay on your mat and just listen to the story. We would start in circle, we would read it, We would go through, we would look at the pictures, I'd let them show me who the what this, predict what the story is going to be about. What did they think about the story? Have they ever had any of those experiences that the person in the story has? Who's the author? Who's the illustrator? Who, all the things that they like about the book. What are some of the other books that this author has written? We go through the story. And then once we do all that, they were ready for a nap. Oh, okay. All right. So next time you read a story with your child, try some of these things. Front, back, spine, title, predict what it's about. All right, and we've already talked about different types of technology that you can use. You can use Audible, you can use books on tape, you can use recordings, you can use, even to develop language, there are tools like the big talk button that, you can program words in. And for your child who's not verbal, you can have them with the most important words or the most common words, and they can use that to communicate. I've even seen parents of fur babies using this type of technology to communicate with their animals. So I know that this is a great way to expand vocabulary, and I know that it works. If you have a child who's challenged when it comes to writing, have them dictate and then have the screen write for them. And then they can go through and correct what the screen has turned from their voice into a text, talk to text onto the screen. You can use highlighters. I have children who have, I work with children who have visual impairments, and all the words on the screen sometimes are just too much. It's okay. Don't show them all the words. Give them, there are devices we can use that show one sentence at a time so they don't get overwhelmed with everything that's on the page. We are also able now to create stories at different reading levels. So you can have a child who's reading a Shakespearean story, but at their age level. So you can level books and stories so that they're getting this information and building that language. There's so many pieces of technology. Even the cell phone is a piece of technology that can be used to develop language. I have had children who were nonverbal, typing into they can text what they need to communicate if talking to a person who doesn't understand ASL or American Sign Language. Okay. So we just as much as possible get those apps, but I will caution, because technology is so addictive, our children tend to get into technology and start veering off into other places and using it for other things. Put a time limit on it, give them a limit to where they can be on the technology, switch it up a lot, get them used to using other versions of communication and literacy building tools. Okay. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is our prompting and writing skills. I love to have children, especially when they're really emotional and upset, to write down what's going on. Tell them to use words, use your words. If they can't control the emotions to the point where they're able to articulate with words what they're going through, have them pause and just write it down. Take some quiet time, maybe put on a little bit of music, and have them start to articulate through the words. And then I would also have them read it back to me. Tell me what you wrote on your paper. And then if I had questions as they were writing, as they were reading what they wrote, I would pause and we'd have an expanded conversation about what that was. Give them things to write about that they are really interested in. That's one tool that's a social emotional tool to help calm children down and help them get their feelings out and express the thoughts that they're having. But also, if they are really interested in a topic and they just want to talk, sometimes as parents, you've got dinner going, you've got this going, you've got another child who needs this or that. What you can do is you can take a minute and say, you know what, I really want to hear what you're saying. I want to know more about this. Why don't you just write up a little summary or just write the gist of it down? And then when I finish, you'll remember what you're saying because it's written down and we can go and talk about this later. Or you can have them write about other things, things that they find interesting. So be encouraging, one of the things that we all love is to have our voices heard. And when you have someone who doesn't have time to hear your voice or they just don't want to hear your voice, that can be really hard, especially if you already struggle to communicate. So what we want to do is we want to definitely encourage communication, but one way to do that when we can't have a conversation is to use writing. Writing is another way that they can communicate, and it also helps them enhance their language skills because they're learning more about letters, how they work together, and all the other things that we talked about previously. Okay. All right. Remember, students who have great literacy and communication skills tend to do better in school.